people. Human communication. Was that a way to get your attention? That's what we're always trying to do. Get the attention of the audience when we're presenting a speech. There are multiple ways to do it. I did discuss that in one of the previous videos. Some of you at times ask me questions of things that I put in a video. Guess what? Make sure you've watched all the videos. Okay? I appreciate that. We're prepping for your discussion post, which is due November 15th. I shall open it out for you. In that discussion post, you are discussing some of the flaws in small group communication. Of course, those flaws you know about, some of them, just social loafing. That's always that one person who's probably not doing what they're supposed to be doing in the group, and another person is doing everything, and what dismay and frustration that will bring. So that could be one flaw you discuss. There are a multitude of others, but make sure you read Chapter 13, Small Group Communication, in preparation for your discussion post that is due on November 15th, but I'll open it out for you on November 14th. Secondly is November 22nd, your persuasive speech, which is 6 minutes, 6 sources, and a visual aid. Make sure, folks, if I said 6 minutes, 1 hour per minute, so you have 6 hours to prep for this speech. Yes, that includes your research. When you chose your topic, many of you have sent to me your topic choice. Your topic, research, organizing your thoughts, prepping for your visual aid, deciding what you're going to wear, practicing your speech, and then uploading it in a timely fashion so you don't say, hey, Doc, electricity went out. I was at my last minute trying to upload and I'm late. Don't do it. Not a good look. Okay, folks, let's be professional and do things in excellence. Persuasive speech, I'm going to discuss that more in a little chapter after this discussion about shared meaning. We want to make ourselves understood, whether it be in family situations, whether it be with friends, work site, professor, student. You want to be understood. Well, you must have shared meaning. What do we mean by shared meaning? There are some variables we need to consider when we discuss shared meaning. Semiotics, which is the study of signs and symbols. Signs and symbols. That is, of course, the peace sign, which is an emblem. If someone sees that, peace, that means peace to someone. If you take your finger and yet your brain, round and round you go, you say that person is loco, strange, crazy. These are symbols, signs, emblems that we use to help make ourselves understood, that become widely acceptable to people in order to attain that shared meaning. Presuppositions. Sometimes you'll say, they'll understand it, they know what I mean, and then they go, no, I didn't. So you presupposed someone understood and they did not. Never assume. You've heard that before. Don't assume that people know. Just like as you're prepping for your persuasive speech, don't assume that people know what you're talking about, your technical jargon, your research, your data. Explain those numbers well. If you're using quantitative information, slow down with your use of numbers so we can grab the gravity of the information that you are presenting. Cultures, there are customs, ways of life, doing things that are familiar to the culture, to that specific culture and not to others. So we must consider that when we're trying to achieve shared meaning. Reflections, thoughts and ideas made after meditation. Sometimes you may believe something and then you go back and think about it and you go, oh, that's right. I've had some time to think about it. I've changed my viewpoint. I've modified how I ponder these points and I view it differently. So be aware that people can reflect on things and change their mind. Purpose. What is the reason, the motivation, impetus for action and existence? That helps us when we're trying to get shared meaning. Be aware of the text, concepts, and definitions. That is key. Oftentimes we see people can't agree on something because they say to them, I didn't know that's what you meant. I heard the words, but maybe over time, historically speaking, the word used to mean one thing, but it didn't mean that. Moreover, the tone that you used did not embody something that you thought connotatively would have been understood. It was not. So remember those variables to consider. Hermeneutics, branch of knowledge that deals with interpretation based on written, verbal, and nonverbal communication from the source and the receiver. Hermeneutics. Sounds huge. Well, trying to be an effective communicator is huge, right? So many things we must be aware of. It doesn't matter the industry, whether it be fast food, whether it be medical, whether it be traffic, or if it be your HOA, homeowners association, farmers, doesn't matter if it's race drivers, car salesmen, trying to interpret all of the verbal and non-communication, throw it into this big cauldron and see if you can find understanding. What a challenge. So if you feel like in this class that I think I've done things a little better, Doc, and other things you're pondering going, I've got to get better at my perception check. Guess what? You're not alone. I've been at this for many years. It takes work, effort, discipline. Actually, in the greatest of these, it takes altruism, right? We can't be selfish as we're attempting to be effective communicators. Making yourself understood. What a challenge, but you can do it. Let's talk about that persuasive speech. The process of creating, reinforcing, changing people's beliefs, thoughts, or actions. Their beliefs. Whoa, that's a huge, colossal assignment because people believe what they believe based on their upbringing, who has influenced them the most, their religious perspectives, framework, ideologies. Their thoughts are impacted by social media. What are you repeating in your mind over and over again that's having an impact on what you believe? And we're trying to impact perhaps their actions. What is the agenda? Your process for creating, reinforcing, changing their beliefs, their thoughts, their actions. When we're persuading that is, make sure people that we are aware of different words to use when we talk about persuasion. We've got to influence, motivate, convince, cajole, coerce, induce, urge, beckon, advocate for. And that's just some of them. Guess what? And each of these words have a different connotative. When you hear it, it makes you think of something different. For example, if you're trying to motivate someone, that's more inspiring, more fluffy, right? Versus if you are attempting to urge them, I beckon you, or you coerce them by force. So be aware when you're convincing people, when you're persuading people, there are a host of different words, tone, connotation that you can use in your attempt to persuade whomever you're speaking to. In this sense, it'll be me and whoever else watches the video. Methods of persuasion. Remember I mentioned in our last discussion, this was about persuasive speeches. And remember in the Greek, their discussion deals with rhetoric. The invention, the arrangement of the information, organization, the memory, and how it's presented. Logos, pathos, and ethos. And remember, it's not logos, not when we're talking about rhetoric, not when we're talking about persuasion. It's logos, pathos, ethos. Logos deals with the logic, reasoning, facts, statistics, evidences presented, and analogies. The numbers perspective. Some people would rather be convinced via numbers versus someone else. They deal with pathos, the emotions. That's their method of persuasion. Depending on the issue, the position, the claim that we're trying to make. Remember we talked about syllogism. Go back and watch the video. We talked about that. Some people will only use emotions, right? The feelings. If your little niece, she says, "Can I have another candy?" And you say, "No, you've had enough." And then she starts crying, "Please, please, please." To quiet her down, what are you going to do? Give her another piece of candy. She's using her pathos very well. Emotions. Others prefer ethos, which is character, trustworthiness, credibility, competence, and experience. Some people perceive individuals more credible than others. They're credible because their education attained, their experience, many years they've been involved in a certain industry, and you'd say, "I believe them. They've been at it for 15 years. I believe them. They've got 3 degrees. I believe them. They're morally sound." These are the questions we need to ask ourselves. What will we use to persuade individuals? Is it the posture that we take? Sometimes it's the voice that we use and the emotional, the pathos. Will you employ, and you can employ all 3 of them across the board. However, there will probably be one that stands out more specifically. You may use more of the logos versus the ethos, but you can use all 3 within your speech to persuade us. Which variable? Cognition, thinking, affection, feeling, behavior, acting. What are you going for? Whom are you trying to convince? You got to know your audience, the age of your audience. You've got to know what they already know and be able to speak to that. What they already know and what they don't know. Sometimes people, and marketing, advertising, when a business is opening, when someone's trying something new, research surveys, even at the end of the term, people want to know how they've done teaching, and guess what? Pass out surveys to try to know the audience, the individual. There are 3 types of persuasive speeches. 1 is based on fact. 2, value, policy. Fact, questions about the truth or falsity of an assertion. Some assertions are clearly true or false. Period. Did the person commit that crime? True or false? There's no question about it. Oh, yeah, right. Think about the O.J. Simpson case and all the multitude of cases. The facts, thus says the prosecution, and then you have the defense, and then you're going, "Oh my goodness, did he do it or not? I'm confused." Sometimes innocent people go to prison. I thought they presented the facts, but the facts weren't so clear. There's something else that impacted. So even though you say you are clear in your presentation of facts, maybe it is not the fact that we thought it was, because that person has in their mind different perspective. Maybe it's about, again, their emotions, their upbringing, their beliefs. They're pondering, "I can't send that person to jail. They really didn't do it." Or they're pondering, and this happens, and it does, people, that when we watch certain cases, and there are so many more cases than what I can pull out of my repertoire right now, but what would seem truth to one person is not the truth to someone else. There's of these variables we have to consider. Cultures, tradition, religion, media coverage. Think about you've watched something and you know the person is guilty. But then if they go and pull out the emotional appeal, the pathos, and even though you know he or she is guilty, if the narrative is pushed enough, if you hear a lie enough, that's becoming more real than we ever have witnessed. You hear it so much that you begin to believe the lie. So yeah, you can choose to present fact, truth, or falsity, but is it really the fact? Is it really the truth? Is it false? But the onus is on the presenter to try to persuade us. Value, belief about the right or wrong or something, good or bad, moral, fair, unfair. People have their beliefs, and you can present your persuasive speech referencing that value. Is it right or is it wrong? Abortion is argued sometimes via a value perspective. Policy should or should not be done. When you're arguing a persuasive speech based on policy, that means an existing policy is not working so well, so let's change the policy, and you present the way you're going to modify that policy. I recall September 11th, some of you weren't even born, 2001, but going to the airport changed dramatically. They changed the policy in airport travel. We used to could go through, not be concerned about taking off shoes, bracelets, put your computers locked in. But after that devastating day in this great country, they changed the policy. But I was just on a flight last week. Policies changed again because we feel safe again. So we don't have to take off our shoes like we used to have to do. I think it's a little laxed, but again, policy, if you are arguing via a policy change, make sure you clearly tell us how and what should and should not be done. Tell us what the existing policy is and what you propose to change it to. Organizing speeches on question of policy. You can organize them via problem solution order, problem cause solution order, comparative advantage order, Monroe's motivated sequence, which is the 5 steps of attention, need, satisfaction, visualization, and action. Clearly, if you're going to use a problem solution, make sure you clearly state, lucidly state the problem and then provide the solution. Problem cause solution, same agenda with though adding the cause. You're telling us the causes. And remember, this is a 6-minute speech, so you should spend about a minute on your introduction, introducing us to the speech topic, finding out how you're going to pull us in. Then you have no more than 3 points for a 6-minute speech, because you also have your end, which should be about a minute and a half. So for each main point, you should spend about a minute and a half. If you had 2 main points, you could spend about 2 minutes on each of those, but you want to make sure the information that you present on each point is presented in a balanced fashion, so you don't have more time spent on one point versus the other. You want to present them in a balanced fashion, balanced way, so one point doesn't look more important than the other. That often happens if you go to church on Sunday and the pastor will say, I just have 3 points today, and he totally spends most time on one, and then you get to point 3 and he spends like 1 minute, and you're going, Pastor, is point 3 as important? So let's make sure we try to balance all of our main points. When you, and some of you have asked me about a visual aid, as you can see here, I'm using PowerPoint. Don't forget, you're supposed to be standing when you're presenting, but be advised. You can use PowerPoint. You can use an object, brochure, poster board. I've seen some of you had your dog, because you were talking about your dogs in some kind of way. So you had your dog in the pic. You can use a video. If you do use a video as your PowerPoint, don't make it too long. Only about 30 seconds, 45 seconds of a video use. But the key point is to have a visual aid that complements, accentuates the words that you are presenting. Remember, we are in an attempt to learn how to use our communication, whether it's verbal or nonverbal. Use our communication in an effective way that we have the receiver understands, can connect, there's shared meaning with your presentation. Ultimate questions of debate: is the argument a matter of right, wrong? Which is the ethos? Is it a matter of legal, illegal? The logos, people. Remember, you won't remember, but nonetheless, ethos, logos, pathos. Or is the argument all about feelings, which is the pathos? Which method of persuasion will you use to convince us? Again, it's 6 minutes, 6 sources, and you must have a visual aid. The discussion post will be open November 14th. Speech to upload is going to be open out for you November 21st. You have a couple days to upload it, but if you don't want any point deductions, please make sure you have it in on the due date. The discussion post is due November 15th. The persuasive speech is due November 22nd. So we have small group. Let me give you a couple pointers there. When you have a small group, groups, and we're talking about interpersonal communication, you got to have at least 3 to up to a small group, 15, 20 people. Typically, a leader emerges, and we'll talk about leadership, but a leader emerges fairly quickly in a small group. So be mindful of that. Typically, that person could be charismatic or quite knowledgeable, and that will bolster them in a leadership position. In addition to that, you have in leadership task, one who knows what the task is. Clearly, we know what we're supposed to be doing. We're not getting off focus. We're not confused. We look at the mission statement. We stay focused on the agenda to achieve that. Task-oriented. Relational-oriented promotes that interpersonal. You want to have within the group relationships that are welcoming, that are kind, that are cohesive. But when you're talking about task-oriented, sometimes people say, we've got to abandon your relationship. We're not about the interpersonal side of it now. Depending on the deadline, depending on the assignment at hand, we have to stay on task. Sure, I want to have a relationship to those in my group. But sometimes once the task, the mission is expired, there is no more relationship. You might not even see that student, that friend again. You might not even see that individual at the workplace again. So we've got to know the mission of the small group. Small group development deals with forming, storming, norming, performing, adjourning. You want to look at that, and I tell you these words clearly because you'll probably see them again, perhaps on a test. We have to have the foundation of the group. Why are we meeting? We're scanning the room to find out why, being aware of the goals. Storming, that was forming. Storming deals with conflict. There's going to be conflict that emerges. Norming, we got to know the expectations of the group. Solidify what we're going to accomplish, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. We've got to have some kind of stability and no violation of rules. People tend to violate rules if we don't tell them what the rules are. And you say, well, Doc, people know the rules at my job. They know the expectation and they still don't adhere. Well, guess what? That is the responsibility of the leader of the group to express what the goals and the expectations are. You have to be bold enough sometimes when you're in a small group to pull someone aside and remind them the mission of the group. You say, no way, Doc, I don't have the boldness. Well, you might emerge as a leader later in life, but everybody's a leader in their own fashion. What role will you take? Everyone can lead. You know, they used to say so many chiefs and not enough Indians. This is true. But essentially, we're not on an island. Everyone can lead in some fashion in order to achieve the mission of the group. Performing, we've got to work to achieve the purpose. Adjourning, the group dissolves because the task is completed. So the small group development is something we want to be aware of in order to have our groups stabilize and ultimately to achieve the agenda for the group. Small group development. Remember, your discussion is to be about identifying some flaws of small group communication. And then you're prepping. Your next assignment is you're prepping for your 6-minute speech. That will do it for us here today. If you have any questions, you can email me. I will respond to emails. Again, angela.williams@abac.edu. I really look forward to reading the discussion posts, but most delightful, prepared, eager to watch your persuasive speeches. I hope you're doing well in all of your other classes. People, be encouraged. Don't put a lot of pressure on you. Yes, you have a social life, you work, maybe you have an intern, you've got family. You can do it. Don't give up. Always a joy. Dr. Williams signing off. Thank you.